an example.
Go on.
Radical feminists who want James Bond to be a woman.
Right. Why do you care?
I care because James Bond's a man.
Did you see Glenda Jackson's King Lear?
Yes.
What did you think of it?
It's got nothing to do with James Bond.
It's got quite a lot to do with gender. It's got quite a lot to do with gender.
I've got no problem with a woman spy being a hero.
I mean,
your own. And here's another example. Altrincham School for Girls told all their staff they could no longer use the word girl. And yet the name of the school remains Altrincham School for Girls.
In today's video, James O'Brien absolutely destroys Piers Morgan in a heated debate on LBC. Calm, sharp, and armed with logic, James O'Brien dismantled Piers Morgan's talking points one by one, pointing out the contradictions, the bad faith framing, and the lack of evidence behind Piers Morgan's arguments. You could see Piers Morgan getting flustered as the pressure mounted, desperately trying to change the subject while James O'Brien kept hammering him with facts and reason. So let's dive in and watch how James O'Brien shuts down Piers Morgan in this heated debate on LBC.
And what about the girl's right to be called a girl at that school, given 99% of the kids there are girls? Google.
How many of them have you asked?
Let me finish a little. You wanted some examples?
I don't know, I do, but let's examine them one by one. How many of the girls at Altrincham School for Girls have you asked about how they felt about this?
We had a lot of people.
Because it probably came from the pupils.
Contacted from the school. Hang on. A lot of people from the school contacting us saying it's utterly ridiculous. And what about, they said, why is it that the transgender right, which is just a tiny minority of students, hang on, we're able to dictate how everybody got called in the school?
But I'm agreeing with you that when it comes to trans, there is a tension and a confusion and an unresolved animosity between two very, very furiously entrenched camps. But there isn't on anything else. And you've basically written a whole book.
I haven't finished yet.
Oh, sorry.
Google react to radical vegans screaming away by removing the egg from their salad emoji.
So what?
What about my rights as somebody who loves eggs to have the egg in the emoji? Why does a radical vegan get to have it removed when I, like most people in this country, love eggs?
Yes. Have you found your access to eggs in any way limited?
Only when I click on Google. And look at
your access to actual eggs rather than cartoon representations of them.
My point is, the radical divisions and all these things, and there are much more serious...
No, but you can't say the radical divisions of all these things when you've conflated transgender with a cartoon of an egg.
I haven't. I've just told you different examples. You said you're only talking about trans.
Because that's the only thing that works. Nobody is cross about an egg emoji. Nobody's cross about that, and you're not really.
Of course they're cross about it, or he wouldn't have been removed.
An emoji of an egg?
Of course.
Right.
If people weren't cross about it.
Do you understand why I said I can't tell how much time you spend with your tongue in your cheek? I mean, hand on heart, you're really cross that Google removed an egg from their salad emoji.
No, hand on heart, on the more serious point.
Yes, as long as it's not trans.
Yes, okay. You can pick any subject you like. Hand on heart, my issue with it all, collectively, is that this kind of nonsense, what it drives is a sense of ongoing, all-encompassing censorship, where companies in particular are now bowing to pressure from the woke brigade to virtue signal their way to a place that I find hellish, where people are being dictated to about every single part of their lives. And most of it is trivial, as you rightly observe, but it's the fact it happens on trivial stuff that A, distracts from the bigger picture, and B, drives people completely nuts and makes them think that they have no ability to have any freedom of speech or expression. And I think that is legitimately a really serious issue.
What Piers Morgan is doing here is a classic slippery slope, taking a very specific debate about language and identity and spinning it into this grand narrative of censorship and losing freedom. But when you actually look at the evidence, those claims don't hold water. For example, the Oxford Internet Institute and multiple studies on online speech have found that free expression in the UK hasn't been shrinking, it's actually exploding, with more people than ever able to share views publicly thanks to digital platforms. What has changed is that marginalized groups, including trans people, now have more visibility and more power to challenge harmful language. That's not censorship, it's accountability. And about schools like Altern making adjustments to language, that's not some radical imposition. The UK Department for Education has made it clear that schools are allowed to adapt policies to support minority students as long as it doesn't infringe on others' rights. Surveys from Stonewall and the Youth Chances Project showed that trans and non-binary students experience extremely high rates of bullying and mental health struggles, with many saying simple gestures like inclusive language make them feel safer. So in practice, these changes are about reducing harm, not dictating to the majority. So James O'Brien is right to push back, because conflating serious debates over trans rights with salad emojis isn't just unserious, it trivializes the very real discrimination that trans people face every day.
But you don't think people should be allowed to say it would be great if James Bond was played by a woman? That's freedom of speech.
Not if it happens.
Why not?
Because James Bond's a man.
Yeah, a fictional man.
He's a man. He was written as a man.
Not real.
He's a man.
He's
So
not
you're
real.
happy for James Bond to be a woman, are you?
Hand on heart, I could not give a fig, mate.
Okay, I listen,
If
mate.
it's a good, do you know what I'd do? I'd go to the cinema and decide whether it was a good film or not.
You have things that you care about. I have things that I care about.
But I don't. This is why I like you so much, because I think you really do care about this, and it is. You must, on some level, realise how ridiculous it is, and that's why I have a problem with your book, because the trans issue is profoundly important, and I write very great length and in great detail about it in both the book I published a couple of years ago that you haven't read, and the book that comes out next week. And there's a huge
about your books. If I did, I'd read them.
There's a huge danger of conflating cartoon eggs with young people who feel they've been born into the wrong body.
No, because you decided that that's the one issue that matters.
No, I gave you a lot of space to list all the great crimes committed by wokies, and you've come up with James Bond and a cartoon egg, mate.
Go through the more serious things in the book.
Well, what are the more serious things?
Well, let's talk about
apart
racism.
From trans.
Let's talk about racism and the reaction to George Floyd's killing, and the ridiculous way it went away from being a battle for racial equality and racial justice into utter ridiculousness about anything that anybody in the world on the woke side decided was racist and had to be cancelled.
For example?
We ended up focusing on Rule Britannia, Fawlty Towers, statues that were being destroyed all over America of famous presidents, with the most tenuous links in some cases to slavery. Over here, Winston Churchill being boarded up and Mandela being boarded up.
Yeah, but we're back there again. They always board them up.
Completely crazy, because and the damage is done to the actual cause.
I hear you. I don't buy it, but I think you're sincere. I mean, okay. So, final question: can you name any major public figures who think that statues of Winston Churchill should be taken down?
Yes.
Go on.
Interviewed him on the show.
Who?
Kehinde Andrews, the professor.
He is the guy that every producer in the country will tell you, and we can't find anybody to pursue this point. That's the person we call. And I did say public figures.
The Winston Churchill statue was defaced. It was
by an idiot student. I sometimes think if you'd been to university, you'd realise that idiot students have been around forever, and giving them this level of profile and importance and treating them as if they're a threat to civilization as we know it is their dream come true, Piers.
There are lots of people who think that Winston Churchill is the problem when it comes to the race debate, to which I say, actually, he got rid of the worst racist ever.
But there aren't, though. There might be some dozy undergraduates who've read the wrong books and haven't actually grown up yet. But my attitude would always be, oh, bless them, they'll grow out of it. Yours is, oh, my God, they're destroying civilization as we know it, and we must stop them now.
You realise that when I wrote the book,
yes,
people like you were the people I really wanted to read it.
Yes.
Because I knew you'd react like this.
But I'm not. I'm reacting with
great
affection and amusement.
What James O'Brien is cutting through here is the way culture war debates often inflate trivial examples into existential threats. Take the James Bond example. Film and literature have always reinvented characters. Sherlock Holmes has been reimagined dozens of times, from Benedict Cumberbatch's modern version to female-led spin-offs, and the franchise never collapsed. Even Doctor Who's one of Britain's most beloved culture exports cast a woman in the lead role after 50 years of men, and while people argued, the show carried on just fine. Fictional characters evolve. That's not society falling apart. That's storytelling adapting to new audiences. And on the status and history angle, Piers Morgan is leaning on the idea that criticism of Churchill or colonial figures equals erasing history. But that's not what's happening. Statues are about commemoration, not education. Taking one down doesn't erase Churchill from the history books. It just reevaluates who gets honored in public squares. Germany, for example, doesn't have statues of Hitler to preserve history. Yet its people are some of the most historically illiterate about the Holocaust. The reality is that reviewing monuments is part of a normal democratic conversation about values, not the destruction of civilization. And let's be clear, the real threats to free expression aren't students with placards, they are governments passing restrictive protest laws, or media ecosystems that amplify outrage over symbolic issues while ignoring systemic ones. Reports from Index on Censorship and Amnesty International highlight that the UK government itself has been cracking down on peaceful protests far more aggressively than anything woke students are doing.
No, seriously, I promise you, I'm never going to look at I'm never going to look at a cartoon egg in the same way. I'm not outraged, but just because you use me as an example, I didn't recognise your account, not least because Paris Lees remains a very good friend of mine, and she made an extremely good point about the underpants police. So I couldn't work out whether or not I'm being held up as an example of being woke or a victim of cancel culture.
I think you were an ironic victim of cancel culture, which you don't think exists.
Yes, except on trans issues.
Well, I was giving an example where on trans issues, which is the only issue you seem to care about.
No, well, I care about it more than eggs. Forgive me. Cartoon eggs.
Yeah, but you only care about things that you care about. And
nonsense. I care about equality and decency and honesty and integrity and accountability.
Your shtick is to be blindly partisan about an issue.
Isn't.
And by the way, you do it very well.
No, but I don't do that at all.
You will never.
Why do you have to do this? There's lots of things you can criticise me for without making stuff up. You've made up stuff in the book. You don't have to make up stuff here.
What stuff have I made up in the book?
I love being wrong. Well, you said that everybody who doesn't agree with me, I consider to be an uneducated bigot, whereas the book you're actually referring to when you say that is full of explanations.
I read your Twitter feed.
Well, my Twitter feed, honestly, mate.
Every day.
Life's too short.
Permanently.
We're not. Do you know what we've done? We're not going to have any time to talk about Trump. So the three areas. On my Twitter feed, the three areas upon which you've historically sought to lock horns with me were the utter, the way that Donald Trump's depravity outside the White House would make it absolutely clear to anybody honest how completely dangerous he would be inside the White House, that the Brexit that people voted for was absolutely impossible to deliver, and that Boris Johnson was supremely unfit for office. What did I get wrong?
Well, you're always right about everything. You know?
No, just on those three issues, which are the only things you've ever tweeted me
about. The thing you got wrong is that you refused to accept the result of the referendum.
No, I didn't. That's not what I asked you. I said that the people weren't going to get the Brexit that they voted for. They're not, are they? Of
course not. But
So you agree with me?
Of course. You know I agree with you about Brexit.
And Trump?
Trump, as you know, I've known him a long time. I see good and bad in him, and I think he may lose the election for all the bad side of him coming to the fore. But I don't see him as bad as you do, but I don't see him as good as he sees himself.
What James O'Brien is really exposing here is how culture war arguments often lean on exaggeration rather than substance. Take the so-called cancel culture panic around trans issues. If you look at the numbers, it's nowhere near the existential threat people like Piers Morgan make it out to be. A YouGov poll last year found that the vast majority of Brits, over 70%, had never personally experienced or even witnessed someone being cancelled. And when you drill into actual cases, most so-called cancellations amount to criticism on social media, not the destruction of someone's career. On trans issues specifically, the reality is starkly different from the caricature Piers Morgan is pushing. Trans people in the UK face some of the harshest conditions in Europe. A 2021 Stonewall report found that nearly half of trans people had attempted suicide, and 2/3 faced daily discriminations. Meanwhile, the waiting list for gender identity services under the NHS is now measured in years, leaving people without access to basic healthcare. That's the real crisis, not whether someone makes a joke about cartoon eggs or plays outrage politics about James Bond. And James O'Brien is spot on about accountability. When public figures get called out for harmful comments, that's not censorship, it's consequences. Freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from pushback. And in fact, the European Court of Human Rights has consistently ruled that democratic societies require a balance between free expression and protecting vulnerable groups from targeted abuse. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.